What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheetaber. We're going to be talking about today's eight game on FanDuel slate, 6 game on
Yeah.
DraftKings slate. It's a very different slate. The FanDuel locks at 640, DraftKings 705. So I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a few really weird situations today, and I'm not quite sure how they're going to play out in terms of DFS. There is, so I guess they're not put on the slate. Okay, they didn't put on the slate. It'll make it a lot easier, but we have I just wanted to touch on this before we get into Sheets' awesome golf win and talk about the weekend and everything. But yeah, Danny Jansen, who was traded from the Blue Jays to Boston, is going to be playing. It's the first time it's ever happened. He'll have played for. He's going to be playing for the Blue Jays again. But I guess that game is not even on the slate. It's a very strange. Oh, maybe I don't know. Actually, I'm looking again because it's a doubleheader and it's a replay of an earlier game. But I guess they took it off the slate. So I actually am just talking about something for no reason, but I thought it was relevant at first.
Well, to be more clear, because
sorry, it is on the slate. It is on the DraftKings slate. It's not on the FanDuel slate.
But to be more clear, because you didn't really get into it, it's the first time ever he's playing the same game for two different teams.
That's it's the strangest thing I've ever heard. They're the one's the guy who was traded to the other dugout, but anyway, it's very, very strange. But Sheets, great weekend, great win for golf. Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll jump into the slate.
Yeah. So Friday, I went out to as I told everyone, I was going out to Circa on Friday to register for the Survivor contest and the Circa Millions. And usually, as you very well know, I'm there for like 12 hours. You know, I go Friday, register, go to dinner, wake up Saturday morning, and leave. Right. But this time, I won through all my DraftKings stuff from last year. I traded it in for last year. I got the suitcase, right? I got the luggage, but this year for the points, I traded in for this Apex experience where I got to go to the UFC card at the Apex, which is kind of like the studio. So it's like only like 3 rows and like the whole place, like watching them fight in your living room. And so I made the whole weekend out of it, and I brought my daughter out with me, and she embraces like all that stuff. Like she could care less about UFC, but just any new experience, she's totally in. So awesome. We went out Friday. I got to we registered at Circa. I met Jeff Benson out there. I spoke to him for a few minutes, and then I ran to somebody else. The guy I backed in poker for 10 years. I never met him. He showed up, and I get money from him, and I owed money to someone else instead. And Ashley's watching me do all this stuff. Like, let's just, oh my God, my dad being a degenerate. I'm watching it full hand, right, firsthand. And so then we went out to spent like zillions on dinners and stuff on Friday. And then Saturday, we went, did the more lunch, more drinks, more whatever. And then we went to the UFC thing, and she actually embraced it quite a bit. She was there for like half of it, got some pictures with the fighters, and then we left Sunday morning. And as far as DFS goes, you can't play when you can't register for stuff when you're in Vegas. So whatever you played, you had to register beforehand, or you can't play. So I couldn't play any baseball over the weekend, but what you could play is obviously golf. So I registered for the golf stuff and also pre-registered for the UFC stuff. So the only action I really had was in golf and UFC. And I played, as you guys know, that 4-4-4-4. And, I played Geyserman, and then this is like the benefit of having, no cut, and you get a guy like Geyser was like literally perfect for no cut and like showdown, he don't give an F about anything. Okay. And he would go triple bogey, and then next thing you know, he's even. Right. So I was watching them the whole week. I was kind of fluttering around with it being like in the money, and I was in the money going into Sunday. And Sunday I was on the plane on the way back, so I was able to watch it, but I couldn't really see what was going on in DFS. But I was able to kind of figure it out, because my guy was Cam Davis was like killing it, and he was my between him and Seth Straka, those are my two real differentiators, right?
Right.
And so they were doing all right, and then next thing you know, I'm in like the top 5 or 6 for like the last like 2 hours. I was never going to win because the winner was just like well off in another freaking stratosphere. But there's a big battle between between cash for 30 and like at one point I was cashing for 100 and then back to 30 and whatever it was. And I was basically battling with Aberg down the stretch. I needed him to lose and maybe Xander to do better or whatever. And it ended up doing great. It ended up getting like whatever 6 for 45,000. It would have been 50 if Bradley had made that last putt. Okay, for openers. Okay.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, if one or two things happen at the end, I was basically 70%, I think, to have an extra 100,000.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right.
But again, just because it was at the very end, it doesn't mean that it's that bad of a beat, because all that stuff could have happened earlier. And there's another, I could have maybe not have eagled like 3 days before or something like that. But the way the sweat worked out. It was obviously a little frustrating, but obviously extraordinarily happy with the way I've been running. Tennis, you guys, you don't know. I mean, I've been posting that stuff, really doing well. If anybody's interested in the tennis streets, and hey, continuing to listen. Something's got to pay for baseball variants, so we'll get into baseball right now. There is actually a question I want to ask you, particularly about the weather. Okay.
Yeah.
And it might not even be a real question, but I want to ask you about it. And as far as the slate goes, as you mentioned, I don't know how this Toronto-Boston thing is. I don't know if it's a full game, whatever. You tell me in a minute. But the FanDuel slate has the Yankees, and DraftKings. I think it really comes very very concentrated with the pitching, with one very important decision you have to make, I think, and then a couple of different hitting spots. So let's just kind of get into it. We'll get to the weather. We'll get to the weather after the 7-10. Let's look at the 7-10 game first, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to throw out just real quick just on FanDuel, because those first two games are on there. I think you're going to have just massive chalk on the Yankees just on FanDuel.
Yeah.
And on DraftKings, obviously, we don't have to worry about that because they're not on the slate. I just wanted to throw that out there.
The other addition, by the way, to FanDuel is that Wheeler is in play on FanDuel.
Right.
And he's not on the DraftKings slate. I have Wheeler rated alongside of three others as like one of four options. And aside from that, Yankees look great. They'll be chalky. And then we can just focus with the rest on DraftKings, I guess.
How about that Aaron Judge, by the way? Jesus, man, that guy hits 2 home runs, that home run or 2 every day.
How many home runs does he have?
51
this season.
He's on pace for 63, I think, right now.
He's on pace for 63 by the end of the week. I mean,
seriously, right? He's hit 7 in his last 6 games.
Grief.
It's nuts. Both he and Ohtani, it just never ceases to amaze me. These guys are incredible. Anyway, we can jump into the Boston Toronto game first. What do you like here?
Is this a full game?
So it's going to be a full game, but it's a strange situation. I don't really know what to make of that whole situation, but I don't think there's anything I really am all that excited about doing here, except for I think you could make a good case for both stacks. I think the Blue Jays are kind of interesting, but I don't find myself loving this game. What do you think?
On my numbers right now, I actually have Toronto as one of the top 4 stacks on the board. They've been just pounding the ball recently, and Boston is obviously a good place to hit the ball. And Criswell, I don't know. So I think that Toronto is a very very strong play. But the reason I ask is this a pickup of a suspended game? Is it a full 9 innings? I presume it is.
I think it is a full 9.
Okay, so it's not really him playing the same game for 2.
Yeah, I just read it right before I came on, so I didn't do enough research. I'll double check exactly, but I'm pretty sure it is. And I'm just double checking this. It is a little surprising to see the run line not a little bit higher for Toronto, but the run line for Boston looks huge, and Boston also looks like they're going to be really popular too. So it's kind of weird.
So here it is. Hold on. It says Jansen will be the catcher once the continuation of a suspended game. If the continuation goes off as planned, he'll be the first player to play in the same game for both teams. We have to. It'll be part of a day-night doubleheader. Okay, so there is an earlier game. Okay.
There's an earlier game. Yeah.
Oh, so fine. So that whole thing. It is a regular game 2, 9 innings, whatever. So I do like Toronto, and Boston. Very secondary.
Yep. I hear you. All right, let's move over to Atlanta and Minnesota.
Okay, so here's a question: is this just kind of a glitch or whatever it is? Look at my drafting. What is this thing next to the? Oh, that's wind. Oh, I didn't hover my thing over. I didn't hover the mouse to see what it says. Okay, so that's what that is. I was wondering what that was.
I don't really even understand it because there's almost no wind projected in that game, and there is a little bit of weather concerns about there being some storms later in the night, and maybe the game getting cut off a little bit early. So it's a little bit strange to I don't know why they put the wind thing up. But yeah, Roth has that one. It's the only game on the slate that Roth has is yellow, and anyway, Ober and Fried. It's a good pitching matchup. So.
It is, but I'm not getting to these guys. I have 3 guys that just stand out over the universe, and these guys, they have to be pivots, right? They're both very, very good pitchers, So very good pitchers just always have to be pivots. Max Fried is 8,700,
right?
And Daly Ober is pretty good too, So I think both these guys are pivots against pretty chalky options at the top, or we'll get to.
Mhm.
As far as hitting goes, I'm really not getting any of the bats here.
Same here with the hitting. I like Ober a little bit here. Actually, I think that would be the preferred one I'd go to over Fried. And I actually think he probably ends up a little bit chalkier than maybe the early projections had him. But I do think that he's a very viable option against Atlanta. He pitches really well at home. And the only reason I wouldn't go to Fried as likely, just Minnesota's just been very, very good this year against lefties. But Fried's a good enough pitcher that where you can sort of overlook some of that. But personally, I'm a little bit more on the Ober side. And like you, I'm not going to get to the hitting. All right, San Diego and St. Louis it's like 95 degrees in St. Louis or something today, so it's going to be a real.
Well, that would explain this. Yeah, I'm seeing good numbers for both sets of bats here, for both St. Louis and for San Diego. St. Louis with the preferred value, but I mean, as we've done this before, right? Meaning that the Cardinals do show up from time to time as being great plays, but they don't ever really seem to put up the numbers. But nonetheless, they do look pretty good. They rate for me as one of the top 4. In San Diego, they're a little more expensive, so they don't rate as well from a value perspective, but they look like they have upside as well. And I'm not getting to either of the pitchers.
Yeah, I think this is probably where I'll focus today. I really like this whole game. I like both sides. I think I like San Diego, maybe just factoring ownership and everything in a little bit better, but they are more expensive. I think this is a really good game to target in general, and I'm going to be interested in both sides of it. Like I said, preferring San Diego, and I have them as one of the best stacks on the slate, maybe even my favorite by the time we're done. I think they probably are.
So I think that the last 3 games are where the big decisions have to be made. Okay.
Yep.
And we're going to start with perhaps the most intriguing situation is Detroit against the White Sox. So you have Ty Madden, who is coming up to make the start at 4K, and he's got the best and the worst. He's a strikeout guy, okay, who just gets shelled. All right, so it's really both here. I mean, I think you sort of have to play Madden at 4K almost against anybody, but particularly against the White Sox. And likewise, I really think you just have to play the White Sox here. So how you approach this, or what percent or whatever you play Madden, or what percent you play the White Sox, I think is pretty important. And not to mention the fact that Detroit is showing up for me to be one of the top 4 stacks on the board. So you have 3 of the 4 parts of this game have quite a bit of upside. So I guess I'll leave the rest of the analysis to you. I think that's best I can.
Yeah, so I agree that I probably am going to play a bunch of Madden. I do think that stacking the White Sox is a totally reasonable option. I just think that look, it's a good leverage spot on a small slate. And I don't think you're going to see that much ownership. You'll see a little bit on the White Sox, but I think it's a good spot to to do that. And I actually think Madden might end up being more popular. He's got like the 4th highest expected strikeouts today. I think it's a very look, I think I'm probably going to end up having some Madden. I'm probably going to end up with some White Sox. I also think that you have Detroit, who looks like a reasonable play. But if you want to, it's a small slate. If we're going to talk about other pivots, I don't think Davis Martin is the worst idea in the world for leverage. So if you wanted to throw in a Martin with the White Sox lineup and just go different than what I think the people are going to do today, I think it's kind of a reasonable route to go. I don't love Martin as a pitcher, but I also don't think the White Sox, the Tigers should be that, I don't know. I just don't think that they're an offense that I need to fear. But it is 92 degrees in Chicago today, which is really super hot. So I think you're going to get a pretty decent ownership on Detroit. I have no issue with it, but I just personally, I think I like the idea of getting a little bit lower ownership with the White Sox, where I'm not playing Madden, but I expect to be very heavy on Madden. It's harder when your guy's 4K and he's, projected literally is right near the top in terms of overall projection today. So I don't really know why he wouldn't be even more popular than the 20% he's currently being projected at. And then we get the Colorado game. So Miami and Colorado, Xavier Edwards was originally supposed to be the starter, but I believe he's not actually available. So
they're putting him on the 10-day DL.
Okay. So that's what it was. All right. So what? It's supposed to be Cabrera and Feltner. So what do you like here? She's assuming that it is Cabrera and Feltner.
Well, I mean, these are pretty fishy pitchers in a tough park. So Miami is going to show up as one of the better plays, to say the least. I mean, they're not a great team, but this is a pretty much a perfect spot. And I mean, who can you play? I mean, you play Jesus Sanchez. I mean, he has some power. He's a lefty, and doesn't even matter. But he's really cheap. Interesting is Jake Berger. I mean, he's very expensive, but he can mash the ball. And with the pricing on these pitchers, I don't think that price means anything as far as hitting. I think you can play whatever you want. So you could play all these Miami guys if you want. I would have liked Edwards to have been in. I do like him. But sure, I think Miami looks fine. You have Brenton Doyle at 6K on Colorado, which is a little off-putting. But Colorado looks pretty good too. So I mean, I don't know how popular I think these guys are going to be. But both, obviously both sets of bats are going to be in play.
Yeah, I actually think we'd go a step further. I think Cabrera is a very reasonable play too. I think if you wanted to double spend down a pitcher, you could completely do it on this slate by playing Cabrera. Cabrera is going to have like a strikeout. I mean, I think they're still updating it, but it should be somewhere around 6, and you're not going to have anybody higher than 6.5 today. So I'm interested in Cabrera, and where I'm not playing Cabrera, just sort of like I said about Madden, I'm going to play Colorado. And I think Colorado will be the lower owned of these two stacks. It is a hot day in Colorado. It's 83, so it's not like one of these 60-degree games where we've had there a few times. I like the Colorado side. If they're going to have some ownership, Miami's going to be the more popular of the two. But I'm interested in Colorado, and Cabrera is a very high risk, high reward pitcher. But I am absolutely going to include him as one of the guys I want to play tonight in some of my non-Colorado stacks.
I mean, and then in the last game here, I mean, along with the Madden, which could be speculative, whatever. I mean, these are, to me, I mean, these are the two best pitching options on the slate going head to head in the good park. You have Miller for Seattle against the team that we like to target pitchers against, and we got Pepiot on the Tampa against another team that we like to target pitchers against, and you got righties against righties. It's all good,
Yeah,
you can't get the win out of both guys, but I don't really care too much about that. I don't think today.
Yeah, no.
I think these are the two. Listen, these are the two best plays. I think that Madden is very speculative, but there's no disputing 4K. 4K with strikeout upside, and then I keep going back to this idea that between those three guys, ownership is going to be so flooded that. I mean, I'm not saying to go play Tampa or Seattle, although maybe talk me into that. Maybe something like, somebody from that Minnesota game as a pivot. Or if you really want to be funny, we can go back to the guy we play sometimes when you need a low-owned guy. Maybe something like Berrios. It's definitely not the spot. It's definitely not the matchup nor the park. But just for ownership reasons, like the pivot, even off the pivot, I'm just kind of thinking through the slate a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll probably end up with the Madden and the late night hammer pitchers or whatever, like everybody else. But I don't know. I'm trying to think this through.
Yeah, no, I think that everything you said makes a lot of sense. And I don't like I don't think I'm going to get all that different at pitching outside of maybe Cabrera, who I still think he's going to get a little bit of ownership. But I've got Miller as the top pitcher. I've got, in terms of factoring price and everything, I have Madden number 2 actually. I've got Ober number 3. I've got Cabrera number 4 and Pepiot number 5. So I'm okay with that. I do think you touched on something that I'm a little bit interested in, whether or not you play a full stack or maybe even like a mini stack or even a 2-man. You're just going to get zero ownership on a 6-game slate and I'm a little bit interested in the Seattle side personally. So I wouldn't mind. Maybe a little Julio Rodriguez or a Rosarena, who's, cheaper than what his upside is. Brandon Lau is 4,900 on the other side. I think if you're going to go against Miller, that would be a guy I would consider using. But overall, this is a game for pitching. The only reason I'm interested in the hitting is really just because it's one way you can get different. I have St. Louis and San Diego as the preferred stacks for me, with Colorado next, followed by Toronto. And then I just have a note like about this game to try to get to, a couple pieces in this game. If I'm gonna script anything, which I'm not sure if I'm gonna do yet, I probably will want to make sure I have 15% of Arozarena, 15% of Julio Rodriguez, 15% of Brandon Lau. And if it gives me a mini stack, I don't mind shooting a full stack, but I do like a mini stack there. So that's sort of how I'm looking at this slate on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I just don't think I'm going to ever be able to play a 30% owned offense on a small slate. I just can't do it. So I think
the Yankees, you mean?
Yeah, the Yankees are going to be so popular, and then it's basically going to be all going to be Coors, New York, the Yankees, and Detroit. I think that there's literally anything else you do is going to be low owned enough on FanDuel. And for me, that means I'm going to go straight to San Diego, St. Louis. That's just what I'm.
Who's pitching against the Yankees?
It's what's his name? I don't have this right in front of me. I'm a little slow this morning. Let me grab it. Oh, it's so it's supposed to be Parker, I believe.
He's not bad.
I don't know how I feel about it. It does feel like weird to have the Yankees as such crazy chalk. Parker's been, like you said, he's been mostly decent. He had one blow up game, but it's a lefty against the Yankees. It's going to be hard to. I just think everyone's going to end up going there.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I have not only that, but I think that again, it's the only place you could play the Yankees today, which is going to I think flood them even more.
Yep, and all the Judge and all you hear about every day is Judge and Soto hitting home runs. I totally get it. I just personally, it's hard to click that button at 30% ownership when it's baseball and there's that much variance. That's my only issue. But it's a fun slate. I personally like it when the slates are a little bit different. So I tend to, but I'm going to probably not do the thing that people will do and play those or not play those earlier games heavily. I do think on FanDuel that pitching wise, I actually think you could consider Madden over there, and no one's going to play him. He's 5,500. It's just an interesting way to get different. Bobby Miller was very good to me on Friday, and literally at no ownership on both FanDuel and DraftKings, and he was one of the highest scoring pitchers. But Wheeler's going to be the mega chalk against Houston. I think I'd rather play Bryce Miller against Tampa Bay. I think I'd rather play Pepio against Seattle than I would a 30% owned Wheeler in a very tough matchup for strikeouts against Houston. That's just me personally.
It's an I'm kind of trying to plan out my evening. Again, I'm not going to be around at 6, but I'm going to be out at early dinner. But the thing is that I have to figure out. The only thing I'm going to be back by 7:15 or so. So the only thing I have to figure out is what I'm going to do with the Toronto game. If I could X out the Toronto game, that'd be great, but I can't because I like Toronto.
Right.
So, and again, I'm not going to play Berrios in a big buy-in, so I don't have to worry about that. But I might do something with those Atlanta, Minnesota pitchers. And what does the wind say? Is he blowing in, out? What is the speed?
So I'm seeing just want to throw this out. Now I'm seeing Pivetta as the Red Sox pitcher, and that makes sense with the run line. I didn't understand why with Criswell it was only four even. It's that line is gonna change, and Toronto won't look as good as my guess is in a little bit because you have a righty dominated lineup with Pivetta, who's pretty good against righties.
Oh, so you have Pivetta, because drafting is still showing what's his name, Criswell.
Yeah, I think they're. I don't think it's for sure Pivetta, but I do see him on the MLB.com page, so. That's what I'm going to assume is accurate at the moment. But
I don't need it. But I think I would play Toronto against Pivetta as well.
Okay, that's fair enough. I have no issue with that. Let me take a quick look actually at that because I know he's got to have some history with love.
But I might also play Pivetta.
Right, Pivetta. I think that's actually kind of interesting. I mean, that might be the pivot that makes the most sense.
Yeah, especially if he's actually pitching, and it's actually still Criswell on the DraftKings app, which it is.
Yeah.
If you do actually get Pivetta, then it could be even more low.
If you do play Pivetta, just don't look at the BVP numbers.
Don't look at anything. Don't
look at anything. Just close it. Don't watch the game. Don't peek at your phone and see how you're doing. Just play them. Close your eyes and hope it goes.
and after a couple of these, just see if there's like zeros up there. Like,
yeah, just that's all you can hope for, or even just one. Just something.
Yeah, if you see there's like a big old 4 at the top, you know what I mean? Like
it's pretty nasty that BVP, man, and it's not a tiny sample either, and it's everybody who's in the lineup today. So it's
but they do let him pitch, by the way. I mean, like
they let go for sure.
They let him go. So that's I think this is actually a pretty good matchup for him. If he gets his slider going or whatever, I actually wouldn't mind this. Pavetta's pitching. Again, most people are going to play some combination of Madden, those last two guys.
Yeah.
And then the most obvious pivot again is going to be those Minnesota Atlanta guys.
Yeah.
So if you could do anything else, like something from this Toronto Boston game, which is going to be pretty filthy. You know, it's a tough environment. But hey, if you get away with, or what you said, Bobby. I mean, the Cabrera. That's an idea too. The only reason I don't know about the Cabrera Madden together is what does that get you?
What are you getting exactly? And I was asking myself the same question. I think you could comfortably play a San Diego stack, but there's nobody on this. I mean, unless you're playing Boston specifically, there's really you don't need the savings. It's not. Yeah, so it's an interesting slate. I'll be live at 6 Eastern to go over it. I know Sheets is out tonight, but yeah, we'll hopefully have some good stuff later on, and hopefully see some screenshots later this evening.
And to piggyback off what I was saying about the tennis, it is the U.S. Open starting today.
Oh, right.
Ooh. So the slates are bigger and it's it's softer too. I mean, you see like just weird like normal DFS people like bombing 150s in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, take a look. Listen, take a look at the projections and a little secret, a little hint. Like the projections in the industry are really not that different from each other, and what I do is not that much different. It's just the easiest sport in the universe to project. Right. So you could get like a reasonable lineup just by going with regular projections. But the other thing is that if you have a Saber Sim thing and you do anything at all with ownership fade or contest sims or any of the things that I've been kind of like showing you how to do, you're going to have a shot, at these tournaments, because especially in the first 3 days when there's like 100,000 matches, you know what I mean? Yeah. You don't worry about getting unique or any of those things that I have to sweat over every day. It's pretty, you know how I love the tennis sweat. So it's, and I'm actually, when am I going? I'm going Monday actually.
Nice. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, good luck today, everybody. We'll see you guys. I'll see you live at 6 Eastern.